Hi Pedro, it's such a pleasure meeting you today, and I'm delighted to be here meeting you and knowing more about your career in Mercado Libre and your career path.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you.
As we all know, Mercado Libre started in Argentina and quickly expanded to become the #1 e-commerce platform in Latin America. Today you have a market cap of 49 billion. Did you imagine this?
Yeah, so it's interesting because Mercado Libre has become quite a diversified platform today. We operate the largest retailer in Latin America. We have one of the largest financial services offering. We have one of the most efficient logistics network across 9 countries in the region. And more recently, we're experimenting and getting into other areas such as streaming and content delivery. And yet, we keep copies of the original business plan back from 1999, and it's surprising how much of what we've built over the last 22 years was included in those original business plans. Now, obviously, it's taken significantly longer than we thought it would take, but a lot of the vision has always been there. And I really like the question because, in a way, I think it teases out what we think has been one of our key success factors, which is a very clear vision and strategic intent of what it is that we're trying to build over the long run, and then combine that with an engineering culture that is maniacally focused on little details and on execution. So when we put that culture together, a lot of it is that clear strategic intent, and then prioritization and very strong commitment to execution on the small details.
During the booming days of startups, what did Meli do differently?
There's 3, I think, key elements that have explained or driven our success. I would say they are focus on the human capital that will build the best user experiences, always manage the business for the long term, and make sure that you're investing and deploying capital behind sustainable businesses. So let's focus on the first one, human capital. Not that long ago, we stopped and we asked ourselves, if I could only ask one question to someone I'm about to hire, what would that question be that best predicts success within Mercado Libre? And the answer we came up with is that we had to hire people that really believed in the ability of technology to transform businesses and disrupt businesses. People are able to be successful within Meli and make Meli successful if they really believe in the transformative power of technology. That doesn't mean you have to be a technologist. I don't have a technical background. But you really have to use technology and deploy technology in a way where it can change a business and change an industry. The second one is build for the long run. If you think when we started Mercado Libre, less than 1% of retail existed online. No one had digital banking, right? So we've always had to build for a future that we've always been convinced will come when you buy everything online and where bank branches no longer exist. But that has always meant that we've always built for the long term, even if it means sacrificing short-term results. And I think the third element, which is invest behind businesses that are sustainable, is almost a control for the number 2. When you're building something for the next 10 years, you have to be very careful to not confuse inefficient investments with long-term vision. So every time that we invest behind a new business or a new product or a new service, even if in the short term that potentially loses money, we have to have conviction that in the long term, this is a sustainable business that can hold its own in terms of a financial model.
You were the first to digitize online payments, giving access to millions of customers. How did you manage this in such an uncertain LATAM or regional context?
Uncertainty, macroeconomic volatility, I think those are always challenging elements for any organization. But if you think of our reality, when you were one of the pioneering companies in consumer internet in the region, and like we were talking about before, you basically invented an industry where no one had done it before. You've built an entire organization whose culture, whose processes, whose methods are built to strive in uncertain environments. No one had ever done what we did before, so we constantly have to adapt, reinvent, change our products, see if the consumers want what we're offering. We hire people that thrive in uncertain environments, that are very resilient, that don't like too much predictability, that like uncertain outcomes. Most of our culture is built around product trial, adjustment, and innovation. So when you think of an organization that, because of the nature of its industry, has to set itself with that way of working and that organizational design, when you extrapolate that to macroeconomic uncertainty or political uncertainty, it's a lot easier for us to navigate those environments because of who we are at the core in terms of our culture and the company we are.
Let's continue with some challenges. What has been the most difficult challenge you have faced, and how did you manage it?
So when I joined Mercado Libre, there were 20 people in the company. We're almost 40,000 today. I would say along that journey, there have probably been as many challenges and mistakes as successes. No? I have hundreds of examples, but I'll choose one that maybe shows how that works. So for the first 16 years of our life, we had built the largest marketplace and e-commerce platform in the region, but we had never dealt with logistics. We would leave all of the logistics piece to the people who sold on Mercado Libre. And we quickly realized that a lot of the new competitors that were coming into the region had very strong know-how in how to build their own warehouses, their own distribution networks. And so if we kept doing what had worked, we were not going to be successful going forward. And so about 6 years ago, we embarked on building logistics from scratch, which was something we knew nothing about. We had only ever worked in bits and bytes. We had never touched the physical world. And yet we applied that same corporate dynamic and corporate culture, which is hire people that know about logistics, give them an environment where they're not afraid to make mistakes, where we know there will be many mistakes, build whatever we're building in terms of warehouses and networks for changes, because we're going to get it wrong. So make sure that what you're building is very flexible, and then iterate. Learn, look at the data, hear your consumers, and iterate and iterate. 6 years later, we run the most efficient e-commerce logistics network across 7 countries in an entire region, which is extremely complex. Brazil is a continent in and as of itself.
Your market entry into Brazil was very successful. So many companies failed to make it big in Brazil. What did you do differently?
First of all, we became a Brazilian company, which is critical. So we hired Brazilian executives. I'm Brazilian, for example. The person who led the Brazilian operation and then went on to be the COO for over a decade was a Brazilian. And we've always given the Brazilian leadership teams significant autonomy in managing the business. There's a second factor which is maybe even more important, and it applies to our expansion either into new regions or new products in general. And that's that we have a very replicable model to launch new products or new markets, which is because we already have the largest e-commerce marketplace in all the markets where we operate, we start from there. So we launch a new service on the marketplace with very low new customer acquisition costs because you're selling to your existing customers. You test and you improve the product within that controlled laboratory, which is also less competitive because only we can offer those services there. So that applies to payments, to credits, to logistics. And then only once that new business has reached a certain scale and a certain level of product market fit, do we start offering it outside of the marketplace to the public at large in general.
To what extent do you consider human talent as a key factor of Meli's success?
Absolutely critical. We talked a little bit about this earlier. We are not a retailer, we are not a bank, we are not a transportation company, we are not an entertainment company. We are a technology company that offers digital solutions in those 4 industries. And so our consumers only interact with our technology. That's what we are. And that technology is only as good as the engineers and the product managers that build it. So this is a human capital business, no doubt about it. As a consequence of that, we invest very aggressively behind human capital, whether that's compensation, office space, benefits, and we really focus on trying to build a culture that generates the kind of workplace environment that allows people to innovate, to be disruptive, and to build the best possible products. I think fortunately we've been fairly well recognized on a global scale for being a fantastic place for people to build their careers, but that will always be one of our highest priorities, if not our highest priority, because again, this is a human capital business.
Talking about you personally, what are you most proud about your career path?
So it's coming to work every day and seeing what we've built over the last 22 years, no? So from 20 people the day I joined to nearly 40,000 today, and really the understanding that we're constructing probably one of, if not the generational company to emerge from Latin America during the internet revolution. No, we're one of the 5 largest companies in Latin America. We're one of the top 10 global e-commerce players. I think I also take enormous pride because this was one of the big reasons we joined Meli, or we started Meli all that time ago. We always said with Marcos, the founder, and the group that surrounded him, that most of us had studied outside of Latin America. We had interacted with our colleagues, and we always felt that we were at the same level that they were. Yet when we looked at companies that we were going to go work with, there were many global companies that we thought were great companies, and there were a few Latin American companies that we thought were great companies. So for us, it was always not just about building a company that will democratize commerce and democratize payments. It was also about building a great company in Latin America.
If I may say, you are in the prime of your career. What is your next challenge?
So first of all, I still enjoy what I do enormously. And I think that's the most important thing. But it's also true that as we get older, you called it the prime of our careers, we start having children, and I think we begin to, or I begin to think of issues that go beyond our business. So I think the sustainability agenda becomes more and more central to what I'd like to do with my professional career. And I can't think of a better platform to push that kind of agenda than Mercado Libre.
Thanks, Pedro, for this wonderful talk, and hope to see you again.
No, thank you. That was a great time, great questions. Look forward to doing another one of these in the future.
Great.